Before we get into today's video, friend of the channel and a good guy, Devin Tracy, aka Atheism is Unstoppable, was actually deleted off of Patreon because of alleged hate speech. And for those of you who were patrons of Devin who viewed his content on that website, you can now go over to subscribestar.com/atheism in order to continue to support him. And for those of you who didn't support Devin, can't afford to support Devin, aren't interested, never heard of him, whatever, instead of leaving me a comment telling me your personal grievance, why don't you have a little bit of self-awareness and understand that this announcement is for the people that viewed his content on Patreon and don't know where to go at this point. So I don't care what your opinion is of him. I'm just announcing it for my friend who got banned, even though it was unjustified. Get it? Got it? Good? Now we're going to talk about the Jussie Smollett style hoax that occurred between Duke and BYU University. Another day, another instance of evil white racism. A sporting event that's just an opportunity for America to remind everybody how evil, white, and racist it is, and how foundationally it's built on white supremacy, white supremacists. BYU, Brigham Young University, the Mormon college. Need I remind you that Mormons didn't allow their people to have black pastors up until whatever year, I don't really care. This is the narrative that has been put forward ever since Duke and BYU played volleyball, where a player on the Duke Volleyball team alleged that somebody was yelling out evil white racist slurs that were both evil, white, and racist while she served the ball, which, considering she served 4 sets and the game was televised, it would appear that this investigation would yield the perpetrator. Now, you guys know that this didn't happen. The title gives it away, the thumbnail gives it away. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple's podcasting platform, my tone of voice should give it away. For those of you on YouTube, you can see my face. You know my expression. However, there's actually a lot more to this hoax than meets the eye, and that's why we have to talk about it. But before we get into that, this video is sponsored, so let me chuck it over to the sponsor and then bring it back over here and we'll talk about it on the other side. Have you ever wondered why you lose that youthful glow over time? Well, it turns out a big factor in the aging equation is collagen, or to be more accurate, the fact that your body produces 10% less collagen each and every decade, and thus you don't have that glue that binds your skin together, making it look young. So what do you do about this? I recommend supplementing with Health with Justice, and the reason I recommend this collagen powder is, unlike the other ones that you'll find over the store, is that this one contains about 5 different types of collagen, and it comes with the 60-day money-back guarantee. On top of that, if you go to healthwithjustice.com, guess what? It's 51% off. 51% off, 5 different types of collagen, and a 60-day money-back guarantee. You can't beat that deal. Take it once a day. Restore the youthful glow in your skin. On August 26th of 2022, Rachel or Raquel, I'm not sure, the article that I'm reading actually spells her name 2 different ways, thank God for copy editors in the current year, claimed that while she was playing against BYU, a historically Mormon college, and by the way, Mormons, evil, white, and racist, I don't know if you know that, evil, white, and racist, that a fan was heckling her. But this wasn't your standard heckles. This wasn't what you would expect in a game when you're in the away team's ballpark. This was an instance of evil, white, racist heckling. So like a normal person, when Rachel or Rachel Richardson heard the racial slur, she notified her coach, the coach notified the police came out, and they began observing the crowd, listening for these racial slurs, but unfortunately they weren't able to hear any. Now, that doesn't mean that Rachel or Raquel doesn't allege that the slurs continued, because she does in fact allege that the slurs continued, even though the police were specifically looking for this evil white racist during her serve. She says she still heard it, and nobody at BYU did anything, because I don't know if you know this, BYU's in Utah. Utah has a lot of white people. White people are racist. Did I mention that the Mormon church didn't allow black people to be preachers in their church until like the 70s or whatever? That's just evidence of their evil white racism. Now, Richardson claimed, I was targeted and racially heckled throughout the entirety of the match. The slurs and comments grew into threats. Both officials and BYU coaching staff were made aware of the incident during the game, but failed to take necessary steps. They also failed to adequately address the situation after the game. So, of course, in current year in the United States of America, when the story is just too good to fact check, this was immediately believed by all the usual suspects. New York Times, Washington Post, The Hill, they all wrote up pieces about how BYU is evil, white, and and racist, and they started to contact BYU officials who were so cowardly that in their responses, they didn't want to be named, so they're all quoted anonymously saying that she did inform everybody about this after her second set. We did send people out to address this situation. However, no individual was pointed out during the course of the game, and she appears to be the only person who heard these evil white racist slurs that escalated into threats, even though people were out there specifically listening for it, even though there was video of it, even though you can hear the crowd chanting during the course of the game, which was captured on video, even though there are witnesses from that section, even though there's cell phone videos. Nobody heard it except for her, and they did try to find out who this evil white racist was, but they could not find any evidence of this evil white racist's existence. In fact, despite Richardson's claims, you can actually see a still from the TV broadcast of this game where an officer is on the right looking at the crowd, which is right behind Richardson as she prepares to serve. Remember, she said the heckling and the threats continued throughout the course of the night, and nobody at BYU did anything, even though they informed the officials. Well, here you have the officer glaring into the crowd on the right of your screen as she's serving when she says the threats and the racism continued, and yet nothing was detected despite specifically looking for it. And of course, Richardson was the only one who could hear this evil white racism, which she said started in her second set, or she reported in her second set, and now in her third set or fourth set of serving, when the officers are there, nobody is around to hear it except for her, because she said it got worse and it got more threatening and it got more dangerous. Now, there are a ton of quotes from students who were actually seated on the court, because in these indoor games like basketball and volleyball, there's actually courtside seats, and in the section in question that say that they didn't hear anything. They've actually submitted videos of the way that people were acting in the crowd, because people record themselves doing absolutely everything in this country, and none of the videos showed anything. But all of a sudden, near the end of the game, or actually right when the game was over, Richardson heard a voice, and she knew that that voice was the voice of the evil white racist in question, so she said, "This man did it, get him out of here." And of course, BYU ended up complying with her request, and they banned this individual for life. Now, it turns out that this individual was actually mentally handicapped. It turns out he was just a guy who liked volleyball. He approached one of the players, probably was a fan of one of the players, and again, mentally handicapped individual. On top of that, BYU actually did an investigation. They reviewed, thinking that this was the guy, all of the footage where they have this guy covered, including surveillance footage, and they found no indication at all whatsoever that this person was even heckling, much less doing any racially motivated heckling. But even though BYU thinks this person is innocent, it turns out that according to statements given anonymously to the paper, they did it to do a PR stunt. They punished and banned somebody who actually was a fan of BYU volleyball, who is mentally handicapped, as a sacrificial lamb in order to appease the mob that, of course, was ginning up the hysteria related to this hoax. Now, as if we needed any more exoneration for this anonymous mentally handicapped person, who of course was white and was banned from the arena because they needed a fall person, they needed a patsy, it turns out that upon reviewing the surveillance footage, this person, identified by Richardson as the evil white racist, the mentally handicapped person, wasn't even seated in the same area that she identified previously as the section where all the evil white racism and the threats were coming from. So, she just heard this guy's voice because he was awkwardly approaching a player, which you're not supposed to do, said it was him, and then he was ejected and banned for life from this thing, and BYU internally admits that they banned him for life just to appease the mob. Now, BYU has been absolutely pathetic all throughout this entire process. They admit in several statements that they haven't found any evidence at all whatsoever to indicate that this actually happened. They admit internally that they banned this mentally handicapped person as a sacrificial lamb in order to stave off the heat. But even as evidence mounts up to show us that this was in fact a hoax, it turns out they're standing by it. They still believe her, because even though she's the only one who heard this, and we have 3 different versions of the story, which I'm gonna get to, evil white racism is so strong, and it's far easier to throw the mentally handicapped under the bus, your entire student body under the bus, than to actually face down the mob. And by the way, there are consequences for BYU. A school in North Carolina that actually had a match against BYU pulled out because of the evil white racism that is omnipresent at Brigham Young University. publicity. But now we need to get into the varying accounts of these events, because it turns out that Rachel or Raquel or Racalia, whatever it's called, again, copywriter for the article, pick one spelling of the name and stick to it, actually told her father about this incident. And it turns out that her father has a completely different account of these events than is portrayed to the media and was told to BYU. So in Rachel's original version of this tale, there was one person heckling her throughout the course of the game. She reported the heckling. She identified this one person after the game who turned out to not even be in that section, and there's no evidence that he was actually the heckler. He was banned for life. However, her father, Marvin Richardson, actually says there were multiple people throwing these racially insensitive racial slurs in her direction throughout the course of the game. Now, Marvin saw the game on TV, heard no slurs on TV, was not at the game. He was actually, I think, in Boston, but he assures us all that for sure there were multiple people throwing these racial epithets at this poor girl, this poor innocent girl, evil white racism, just everywhere in our society. People cannot handle black people in sports. It's not like any black athlete has ever existed ever, and Utah doesn't have a basketball team, so obviously evil white racism all around us. But that's just version 2. There's actually a third version of the story, which comes from Rachel's godmother, who was also not at the game, is a racial justice activist, self-described. She's actually a race hustler and is currently running for office because her account is completely different. So, according to her, and I will quote from her, "While playing yesterday, my goddaughter was called the N-word every time she served. She was threatened by a white man that told her to watch her back going to the team bus." Now, Pamplin is currently running for a judgeship in Fort Worth, Texas, and I highly recommend, if you're in that area, that you do not vote for her, because she made this version of the account part of her campaign immediately, even though this was not alleged by Rachel, and it's a weird expansion because now we have a separate instance of a separate evil white racist man heckling her and telling her to watch her back as she went to the team bus after the game. So, racial epithets being thrown at her, the N-word being dropped over and over again each and every time that she served, the wrong person being identified by her, according to the surveillance video, but also the father says there were multiple people, and now there was an evil white racist who was evil, white, and racist that was heckling her on her way back to the bus, because that's how racist BYU is. And by the way, BYU did absolutely nothing. Ignore the photo of BYU actually sending an officer to observe the crowd, waiting for somebody to step out of line so they can eject them. Ignore the person that they sacrificed for PR purposes, even though they know for a fact there's no evidence of this incident, and they know for a fact that even if there was evidence of this incident, this person was totally not guilty. Whatever. All these evil white racists are just everywhere. They were dropping in and out, and they could only yell out in such a way that a black person could hear. You see, the thing is that you don't understand is that actually black people who are the victims of evil white racism, they got some special hearing. They got super hearing, if you can believe it. And even though there were other black people at the game that didn't have this super hearing, Rachel Richardson is extra sensitive to those issues, so she definitely heard it. She definitely heard this incident, and it definitely happened multiple different times, and the cop that they stationed was an evil white racist cop because he's white, and therefore he's racist, and therefore he's evil, so that's why he didn't hear it, and that's why the surveillance cameras didn't hear it, because essentially racial slurs can sometimes operate like ghosts. Maybe they get caught on camera, maybe they don't get caught on camera. Who knows how it works? Maybe there was a flicker in the footage. Who designed the camera? Possibly Thomas Edison, evil white racist. Maybe it was a French designer. Guess what? French people are white, therefore they're racist. Checkmate, bigots. Volleyball, also racist. They're playing inside on a basketball court, so they're appropriating a sport that black people are good at for a white people sport in a white state. Definite racism. I just cracked this case. It's over. Now, by the way, if you're curious about the history of Pamplin, the godmother that's running for this judicial election, it turns out that her social media is flooded with anti-white racism, attacks on white people, and a lot of this stuff I'm not sure if I could actually read in this video without getting demonetized, without getting age restricted, but there is one or two posts that I have to highlight for you guys, especially for my audio listeners who won't be able to see these images, although they are linked in the article in the description of this video. So she has attacks on Clarence Thomas for being married to a white person, a bunch of other anti-white stuff, including calling Bernie Sanders rallies far too white. She also has posts of her at restaurants taking photos of random white people because white people just get on her nerves. But the best one is her saying, "I went to vote," and by the way, she's wearing some kind of semi-military uniform, and white people, WYPIPOE, asking me all these questions about my jacket. No, I'm not in the military or a militia. I feel like I'm at war with them, though. So unsurprisingly, this person who needs something to get her campaign some attention, this person who hates white people, came out with the most extreme version of the story and immediately tried to push it forward to get her own name in the media in order to boost her own electoral prospect. Now look, race hustlers are gonna race hustle, we know that, and this person who's running for a judicial election should be nowhere near a judgeship based on her series of posts that are clearly anti-white, and specifically anti-white women. Remember, a judge is supposed to be unbiased, and this person thinks they're at war with white people. That's how they envision themselves. So obviously, disqualification, but we shouldn't have elected judicial positions in the first place, but that's an issue for another time. The thing about this story that really irks me is that BYU is facing consequences from other teams, and they're not standing up for themselves. They actually sacrificed a member of their own community in order to satiate the mob, and of course, it's not good enough. And even more annoyingly, you have all these people and all these articles being written about how there's nothing to be gained from this racial hoax. Nobody would ever do this, even though we have incidents like Jussie Smollett, and of course, hundreds of other instances that I've covered individually on this channel, and you've seen widely reported on a bunch of other places, a bunch of other outlets, and on a bunch of other channels. Again, Rachel Richardson, completely unknown. Women's volleyball, that goes into the category of who cares unless it's the Olympics, and even with the Olympics, it also kind of goes into the category of who cares. But all of a sudden, this no-name Duke player was doing interviews on ESPN, and one of the things that is a big red flag, one of the things that you definitely want to take note of, is that even in her ESPN interview, she's immediately started talking about how I want to move on from this incident, even though it's been leaked that BYU punished the wrong person.
Slurs spoke with ESPN about the experience. She says she is ready to move forward.
I want the most out of this. One is to raise awareness, and two, to hopefully encourage institutions such as BYU and others to start really putting in those efforts and the funds to educate the general student body. I don't want to group BYU altogether in a negative light. So I've just seen it as an opportunity to raise awareness for the fact that racist incidents such as these, they still are happening.
The wrong person that was allegedly identified by Richardson, she doesn't seem all that interested in consequences for the other fans, the multiple fans in the stadium according to the father who racially heckled her, the actual single fan that she accused of racially heckling her, and the person who chased her onto the bus and told her to watch her back as she was leaving the game. So no interest in that. It's just time to move on. She's the victim, but thanks for the fame, idiots. Definitely go vote for my godmother. This is totally not a scam. Let me start the GoFundMe so you could send me money because, oh my god, I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you heard this before. America, evil white racism. That's what it's all about, and she's the victim of it. Definite victim. Put her on ESPN, put her on Time Magazine. Everybody glorify this no-name athlete because we definitely need to, because this incident without proof that actually shows us that they punished the wrong person is the proof, because the accusation is all you need for the proof of evil white racism. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show me by leaving a like. Subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. Support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about the evil white racism over at BYU. Till next time.